The council chamber floated in the darkness between stars, a massive station where representatives from 43 different species gathered to discuss matters of galactic importance. Today, the chamber buzzed with nervous energy. The Chromath Empire had called for an emergency session, and everyone knew what that meant. Another species would fall. Ambassador Chen Wei sat in the human delegation seat, her hands folded calmly on the table before her. She had been Earth's representative for only 2 years, but she had learned quickly how galactic politics worked. The strong took from the weak, and the weak either bent or broke. Humanity, having joined the galactic community just 30 years ago, was still considered very weak. The Chromath prelate entered through the main gate. He was tall, nearly 3 meters, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer under the chamber's lights. His species had conquered 17 civilizations without firing a single shot in anger. They had perfected something far more efficient than war. They simply took everything away, piece by piece, until surrender became the only logical choice. "I call this council to order," the prelate said, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. "We are here to discuss the human problem." Chun felt the eyes of dozens of species turn toward her. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked away quickly, not wanting to be associated with a doomed species. The Etherean delegate, an elderly being whose own people had fallen to the Chromath 300 years ago, caught her eye and shook his head slightly. "A warning." "There's no problem," Chun said calmly. "Humanity has violated no galactic laws." "You exist in space we have claimed," the prelate replied. "Your colonies occupy 12 systems that fall within our sphere of influence. Your expansion threatens our security. This cannot continue." Chun had studied the Chromath carefully. She knew how they operated. They never attacked directly. They never destroyed worlds or massacred populations. Instead, they announced claims to territory, backed by overwhelming force, and then methodically stripped away everything of value. First the outer colonies, then the industrial centers, then the home world itself. By the end, resistance seemed pointless. Why fight when you had already lost everything? "What do you propose?" Chun asked, though she already knew the answer. The prelate smiled, showing rows of crystalline teeth. "Humanity will withdraw from the outer colonies within 1 standard cycle. You will abandon your industrial worlds within 2 cycles. Within 3 cycles, Earth itself will become a tributary world under Chromath protection. You may continue to exist as a species, but your independence ends today." The chamber fell silent. Several delegates looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up. The Chromath held too much power. Their fleet was the largest in known space. Their tributary species provided them with endless resources. To oppose them was to invite the same fate. "And if we refuse?" Chun asked. "Then, we take everything by force," the prelate said simply. "The result is the same, but many more of your people die. We have done this 17 times before, Ambassador. Every species makes the same calculations you are making right now. Every species chooses survival over pride. You will too." The Etherean delegate leaned forward. His name was Koth, and he had lived through his own species' surrender centuries ago. "Ambassador Chun, please understand. The Chromath do not bluff. They do not negotiate. They have never failed. My people chose to fight at first. We lost millions before we accepted the inevitable. Do not make the same mistake." Chun looked at Koth and saw genuine concern in his ancient eyes. He was trying to save human lives. She appreciated that, even if he did not understand what he was asking humanity to give up. "May I have 1 cycle to consult with my government?" Chun asked. "Of course," the prelate said magnanimously. "We are not unreasonable. Take your time to reach the only sensible conclusion." The council session ended, and delegates began filing out of the chamber. Koth approached Chun as she gathered her materials. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "I wish there was another way. But there is not. The Chromoth have perfected the art of taking without destroying. They will strip away your colonies, your industries, your wealth, all while letting your people live. After a few generations, your children will forget they were ever free. It is a terrible fate, but it is better than extinction." Chun looked at the old delegate for a long moment. "You are kind to warn me, Koth, but I think you are missing something important." "What is that?" "You assume that having everything taken away is the worst thing that can happen to a species," Chun said. "For humanity, it is Tuesday." Koth's expression showed confusion, but Chun did not elaborate. She bowed respectfully and left the chamber. The message she sent back to Earth was brief. They have issued the ultimatum, proceeding with restart protocol as discussed. They do not understand what they are challenging. I recommend we show them. The response from Earth came within hours, signed by every member of the United Earth Council. Approved. Let us teach the galaxy something about the human condition. They think losing everything is the end of the story. They have never read our history books. Begin Phase 1. Chun read the message 3 times, then deleted it from all records. She looked out at the stars beyond the station and allowed herself a small smile. The Chromoth had conquered 17 species by taking everything they valued. But they had never faced a species that had spent 10,000 years on a single planet, building civilizations, watching them fall, and building them again. They had never faced a species that knew in their bones that losing everything was not the end, but often just the beginning. The Chromoth thought they were beginning a conquest. Chun knew they were walking into a lesson they would never forget. Humanity was about to lose everything, and that was exactly according to plan. 3 cycles passed, and the Galactic Council was called into emergency session once again. This time, however, the Chromoth prelate did not look pleased. His silver skin seemed duller somehow, and his crystalline teeth did not show when he spoke. "The Council must review the human situation," the prelate announced. "Their behavior violates all standard models of civilizational response to conquest." Ambassador Chen Wei sat in her seat, looking as calm as she had 3 cycles ago. Around the chamber, delegates whispered to one another in confusion. The general mood was one of bewilderment rather than the usual resignation that accompanied Chromoth victories. Koth, the Etherean delegate, activated the central display. Images appeared showing the human outer colonies. Or rather, what had been the human outer colonies. The Chromoth had taken them as planned, exactly on schedule. But instead of finding thriving settlements full of resources and dejected populations, they had found something else entirely. "Explain what we are seeing," demanded Prelate Vorn. Another Chromoth representative who specialized in psychological operations, Da Chun, stood. "You are seeing the result of the Great Restart Protocol. When you issued your ultimatum, Earth activated emergency procedures that have been part of human contingency planning since before we left our home world. We began systematic withdrawal. Withdrawal is expected," Prelate Vorn said, "but not like this. You destroyed your own infrastructure. You launched resource stockpiles into the nearest stars. You dismantled your own colonies more thoroughly than we ever would have. This is economic suicide." Chun nodded. "From your perspective, yes. From ours, it is standard practice. We have a saying on Earth: never leave anything useful for your enemies. We have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know how to retreat properly." The display changed to show something even more puzzling. Video feeds from Earth showed massive public celebrations. Humans dancing in the streets. Parades with banners reading "The Great Restart" and "Back to Basics." News broadcasts spoke excitedly about reuniting families and consolidating resources. "They are celebrating," Koth said softly, disbelief in his voice. "Ambassador, your people just lost 12 colonies. trillions of credits in infrastructure. Decades of expansion. Why are they celebrating? Chun smiled. Because we get to start over. Do you know how many times human civilization has collapsed on Earth alone? Conservative estimates say at least 6 major civilizations rose and fell before we even developed writing. We have burned our own cities, abandoned our own empires, and rebuilt from the ashes so many times that we have dozens of mythological birds representing rebirth. Starting over is not a tragedy for us. It is familiar. The chamber filled with confused murmuring. The concept clearly made no sense to most species present. Show them the economic data, the Chromoth prelate said, his voice tight. New displays appeared, showing graphs and statistics. Koth read them aloud, his voice growing more confused with each line. Human productivity is up 18%. Birth rates have increased 22%. Patent applications for new technologies have tripled. Political unity indexes show the highest cohesion in human history. Volunteer military enlistment has increased by 40%. How? Demanded Prelate Vorn. You have lost everything. Your economy should be in collapse. Your people should be demoralized. Every model we have says you should be begging for terms by now. Chun walked to the center of the chamber. You have studied 17 species. You learned how they respond to loss. But you never studied Earth history. You never understood what shaped us. Let me tell you a story. She activated her own display, showing images of Earth through different time periods. Ruined cities, burned forests, shattered empires. 3,000 years ago, human civilizations around our planet collapsed simultaneously. Climate change, war, famine, disease. Everything fell apart. 90% of our population died. Our Bronze Age ended in fire. Do you know what happened next? We invented ironworking, created new civilizations, and called it an upgrade. 2,000 years ago, plagues killed a third of our population. We rebuilt. 500 years ago, we nearly destroyed ourselves with world wars. We rebuilt. Every single time, we emerged different but stronger. That is history, the Chromoth prelate said. This is now. We are taking your present, not your past. You do not understand, Chun replied. You think you are taking our colonies and our wealth. But all you are really doing is activating something deep in human psychology. We are a species that evolved during an ice age, survived a supervolcano, and walked across continents with nothing but sharp rocks and determination. Hardship does not break us. It focuses us. She changed the display to show current footage from Earth. Massive construction projects. Vertical farms rising kilometers into the sky. Underground habitats being carved from rock. Orbital stations multiplying like cells dividing. You took our outer colonies, so we contracted inward. Every human from those 12 systems came home, bringing their skills, their knowledge, their technology. You thought you were dispersing us. Instead, you concentrated us. Earth and the inner system now have 10 billion highly motivated humans working toward a single goal. What goal? Koth asked. Proving that you cannot break us, Chun said simply. Every human knows what is happening. Every human understands that the Chromoth are trying to take everything away. And every human has decided that this is the most interesting thing that has happened in a generation. We have turned it into a challenge. We have gamified our own decline. The prelate stood abruptly. This is insanity. You are destroying yourselves faster than we can. We cannot conquer a species that conquers itself first. Exactly, Chun said. You build an empire on a simple principle. Take everything away until resistance becomes meaningless. But you never faced a species where losing everything is not the end of the story. It is just the end of a chapter. We will take your industrial worlds next, the prelate said coldly. That will end this madness. Please do, Chun replied. We have already begun evacuating them. Every factory is being stripped. Every resource is being shipped to Earth or destroyed. In 2 cycles, when you arrive, you will find empty shells. And my people will throw even bigger parties. The prelate stared at her in silence. For the first time in his long career, he was facing something he did not understand. A species that responded to conquest with celebration. An economy that grew stronger as it shrank. A people who treated catastrophic loss as an opportunity. Koth spoke quietly. Ambassador, what is your endgame? Where does this path lead? Chun looked at the old Etherean with genuine warmth. It leads to the same place it always leads for humanity. Through the fire and into something new. You asked what we are trying to prove. We are proving that your master's perfect strategy has a fatal flaw. It only works on species that fear loss. And we stopped fearing that a long time ago. The session ended in chaos, with delegates arguing among themselves. The Chromath left in cold silence. And Ambassador Chen Wei returned to her quarters to send another brief message to Earth. Phase 1 complete. They are confused but not deterred. Phase 2 begins on schedule. Remember, we are not trying to win. We are trying to teach. Let them take the industrial worlds. The lesson continues. The Chromath arrived at the human industrial worlds ahead of schedule, hoping to catch humanity unprepared. What they found instead made their commanders question everything they knew about conquest. The factories were empty. The orbital stations were powered down. The mining operations had been systematically dismantled, with every useful component either shipped away or destroyed. Entire planets that had hummed with industry were now silent. But more disturbing than the silence was what they found in the central data cores of each world. Messages. Thousands of them. Left deliberately for the Chromath to find. To whoever claims this world, you are welcome to the empty buildings and dead rock. Everything that mattered already came home. Thank you for the motivation. Dear Chromath, this factory produced 70 million tons of processed titanium annually. We melted the equipment and sent the metal to Earth. Enjoy the empty real estate. You took our colonies. We rebuilt. You are taking our industries. We will rebuild again. How many times can you win before you realize you are not actually winning? The messages were not angry. That was perhaps the most unsettling part. They were cheerful, almost playful. The Chromath had expected desperation. Instead, they found mockery. Back at the Galactic Council, emergency sessions had become routine. Koth the Etherean stood at the central podium, presenting analysis that grew more concerning with each cycle. The human economy has not collapsed, he reported, his voice filled with academic fascination. It has transformed. They have moved from a distributed industrial model to something they call crisis consolidation. Every human who worked in the industrial worlds has returned to Earth and the inner system. They have converted luxury infrastructure into functional necessity. Parks have become farms. Museums have become factories. Entertainment districts have become research laboratories. This is temporary, insisted Prelate Vorn. No species can sustain this level of contraction. They will break. Respectfully, Prelate, that is what we said 3 cycles ago, Koth replied. Instead, their metrics continue to improve. Unity indexes are at unprecedented levels. Crime has dropped 40%. Productivity per capita has increased 32%. They are not breaking. They are intensifying. Ambassador Chun Wei sat quietly, listening. She had learned that silence was often more powerful than speech. Let the data speak for itself. The display changed to show footage from Earth, the planet that had once been covered with sprawling cities of glass and steel, was transforming into something different. Massive arcologies rose kilometers into the sky, housing millions in compact spaces. Underground habitats stretched deep into the crust. Orbital space around Earth glittered with thousands of new stations and habitats. They are building vertically instead of horizontally, Koth continued. They are consolidating their entire civilization into the smallest possible space while maintaining, and even increasing, their technological capability. We have never seen anything like this. A delegate from the Thran Collective spoke up. But why? What is the strategic purpose of compressing your entire civilization? You are making yourselves easier to destroy, easier to blockade, easier to control. Chun finally stood. Are we? Consider what you are actually seeing. Every human is now within a few light seconds of every other human. Our communication is instantaneous. Our logistics are simplified. Our defense is concentrated. You see compression. We see optimization. You see a trap being set, the Chromoth prelate said coldly. He had been silent until now, but his words carried weight. You are deliberately creating a scenario where we must attack Earth directly. You want us to strike at your heart, do I? Chun asked innocently. Or am I simply following the natural conclusion of your own strategy? You take our outer holdings, we move inward. You take our industry, we adapt. You have backed us into our home system. What did you expect us to do? Surrender before you even arrived? Yes, the prelate said bluntly. That is what every other species has done. That is what rational beings do when facing inevitable loss. Chun smiled, and there was something unsettling in that smile. Prelate, I think I finally understand the fundamental disconnect between our species. You believe that rational beings avoid inevitable loss. We believe that rational beings prepare for it, document it, and use it. Use it for what? Evidence, Chun said simply. You have conquered 17 species using the same method. Psychological erosion. You take everything away until resistance seems pointless. It is elegant and efficient. It has worked for centuries. But it only works as long as no one challenges the core assumption. What assumption? Koth asked, leaning forward with interest. That losing everything is the worst outcome, Chun replied. You have built your entire empire on the fear of loss. But what happens when you face a species that has spent its entire existence losing things and surviving anyway? What happens when your perfect weapon encounters someone who has been vaccinated against the very fear you weaponize? The chamber fell silent. Chun continued, her voice calm but carrying to every corner of the vast space. On Earth, we have a saying, what does not kill you makes you stronger. It is not always true, of course, but we believe it enough to build our culture around it. We celebrate people who fail and try again. We tell stories about underdogs who lose everything before their final victory. We teach our children that falling down is not the end, but rather the beginning of learning to stand back up. She paused, letting her words sink in. The Chromoth strategy is perfect against species that have never truly fallen. But we are a species that has fallen dozens of times. We have lost cities to earthquakes, empires to plagues, entire civilizations to climate change. And every single time, we rebuilt. Sometimes it took generations. Sometimes it took centuries. But we always rebuilt. So you will rebuild after we take Earth, Prelate Vorn said. That changes nothing. You will still be a tributary species, will we? Chun asked. Or will we be the first species to show the galaxy that the Chromoth can be resisted? That losing everything to them is not the end? That their perfect strategy has a fatal flaw? The Chromoth prelate stood abruptly. You are delusional. You think you can inspire some kind of rebellion among our tributaries. But they are broken. They have been broken for centuries. Watching you lose everything will only reinforce their own defeat. Perhaps, Chun acknowledged. Or perhaps they will see something they never saw before. A species that fights not because they believe they can win, but because they believe some things are worth fighting for even in defeat. You have spent centuries teaching the galaxy to fear loss. We are about to teach them something different. And what is that? Koth asked quietly. Chun looked at the old Etheran, and in that moment, he saw something that frightened him more than any Chromath fleet. He saw absolute certainty. But the only way to truly lose everything is to surrender before you have to. Everything else is just a setback. The Chromath prelate called for a vote. The decision was unanimous. The Chromath fleet would move on Earth within one cycle. They would end this farce and add humanity to their list of conquered species. Chun bowed respectfully to the council and left the chamber. Behind her, she heard the whispers beginning. The doubt. The questions. 17 species had fallen to the Chromath, using the same strategy. 17 species had looked at the math and surrendered. But humanity had never been very good at math when passion was involved. They had always been better at making up stories where the impossible happened. And they had always been willing to bet everything on those stories. Even when the odds were against them, the Chromaths were about to learn what happens when you try to break. A species that considers being broken a temporary condition. Chun sent her final message to Earth. They are coming. One cycle until they arrive. Phase 3 begins. Remember what we are actually fighting for. Not victory. Not survival. Something bigger than both. The response from Earth was 3 words. We remember. Proceed. The Chromath fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system with overwhelming force. 3,000 warships, the largest armada they had ever assembled. The Chromath prelate himself commanded from the flagship, determined to end the human problem once and for all. What they found waiting for them was not what they expected. Earth's defenses were minimal. A few hundred ships, outdated compared to Chromath technology. The orbital stations were armed, but not heavily. It looked exactly like what it was. A last desperate stand that could not possibly succeed. But something felt wrong. Why are they not retreating? Prelate Vorn asked from the tactical station. Every simulation said they would withdraw to the planet's surface, make us fight for every city. Instead, they are holding position in high orbit. The Chromath prelates studied the formations carefully, because they want us to engage here. They want witnesses. He was right. Every major news network in the galaxy had cameras pointed at the Sol system. Dozens of independent observers floated at the system's edge. The Galactic Council had even sent official monitors. Everyone wanted to see the end of humanity's strange rebellion. All ships, engage, the prelate ordered. Make it quick. The battle began, and it was as one-sided as everyone predicted. The human ships fought with desperate courage, but courage alone could not overcome the technology gap. Within 2 hours, half the human fleet was destroyed. Within 4 hours, 3/4 were gone. The orbital stations fell one by one, their debris creating rings of fire around Earth. And through it all, the humans kept broadcasting. Not pleas for help. Not surrender offers. They broadcast everything. Every Chromath tactic. Every weapon used. Every ship destroyed. Every life lost. All of it transmitted across the galaxy with perfect clarity. Ambassador Shen Wei spoke from deep beneath Earth's surface, her image appearing on billions of screens across dozens of worlds. People of the galaxy, you are watching the Chromath Empire demonstrate their power. They are winning, just as they always win. 17 species have fallen to them using these exact methods. We will be the 18th. But we want you to see something important. Watch how they fight. Watch what they do to species that resist them. The cameras showed Chromoth ships firing on disabled human vessels, ensuring no survivors. They showed bombardment of civilian habitats. They showed the systematic destruction of everything humanity had built in space around their home world. This is what awaits any species that challenges them, Chan continued. This is what they have done 17 times before. This is why their tributary species surrendered. Because resistance looks like this: hopeless, painful, futile. 6 hours into the battle, the last human warship exploded in a ball of plasma. The orbital defenses were silenced. Earth itself lay exposed to the Chromoth fleet. 2 billion humans had died in the fighting, more casualties than the Chromoth had inflicted in their previous 5 conquests combined. The galaxy watched and waited for Earth's surrender. Instead, Ambassador Qian Wei continued speaking. "We have lost," she said calmly. "Our fleet is destroyed. Our orbital infrastructure is gone. 2 billion of our people are dead. By every standard measure of warfare, we have been completely defeated. The Chromoth have won." She paused and her expression changed. A slight smile appeared. "But here is what the Chromoth do not understand. We were never trying to win this battle. We were trying to teach a lesson. And we needed to lose everything to teach it properly." On the Chromoth flagship, the prelate felt a chill run through his silver skin. "What is she doing?" Chen's image was replaced with data. Streams of it. Everything humanity had recorded about the Chromoth over the past cycles. Their tactics, their strategies, their weaknesses, how they approached combat, how they targeted civilian infrastructure to break morale, how they had made the same mistakes in previous conquests that they had just made here. For 17 conquests, the Chromoth have faced species alone, Chun said. Each species saw their own defeat and despaired. Each species thought they were uniquely weak. But we have shown the galaxy something different. We documented everything. We shared everything. And now, every tributary species under Chromoth rule has a complete guide to their master's methods. The first rebellion started on Ethera, Koth's home world. 300 years of suppressed rage exploded in a single moment. The Etheran resistance had been watching, planning, waiting. They had seen humanity lose everything and keep fighting. They had seen the Chromoth tactics exposed in perfect detail. And they had decided that if humans could fight knowing they would lose, perhaps defeat was not the end they had believed it to be. Within hours, 17 worlds were in open revolt. The tributary species had spent centuries learning to fear the Chromoth. But humanity had just shown them something more powerful than fear: spite. The sheer, bloody-minded refusal to surrender even when surrender was logical. On Earth, Chun continued her broadcast as chaos erupted across the Chromoth Empire. "We lost our colonies. We lost our industry. We lost our fleet. We lost 2 billion people today alone. By any rational measure, we should surrender now and beg for mercy. But humanity has never been very good at doing what is rational when we can do what is right instead." The Chromoth prelate tried to order the bombardment of Earth, but his fleet was already receiving distress calls from across the Empire. 17 worlds in rebellion. 17 simultaneous uprisings. All of them using tactics they had just watched humans employ. All of them no longer afraid of losing everything because they had just watched a species lose everything and call it Tuesday. "You wanted to break us by taking everything," Chun said. And now her smile was fully visible. "But we are the species that discovered agriculture by accident during a famine. We are the species that learned to fly by repeatedly falling off cliffs. We are the species that reached the stars because staying on one planet felt too limiting. We do not fear loss. We weaponize it." The Galactic Council called an emergency session, even as the battle still smoldered. Koth the Etheran spoke through a transmission from his home world, where fighting raged in the streets. The humans have done what we thought impossible. They lost everything and turned that loss into a weapon. They documented their own defeat so thoroughly that it became a training manual for rebellion. And now we remember what we forgot 300 years ago. That being broken is only permanent if you believe it is. The vote came swiftly. The Chromath Empire was sanctioned. Their tributary species were recognized as free worlds in active liberation. Emergency reparations were approved for humanity. And a new law was passed. Never again would the galaxy allow a species to be conquered through psychological erosion alone. The Chromath Prelate sat in his command chair, watching his empire crumble on every screen. He had won the battle. He had achieved total military victory over Earth. And somehow, in winning, he had lost everything. Ambassador Chen Wei appeared on his personal communication channel, bypassing all security. "You thought you were teaching us about loss," she said quietly. "But we have been studying loss for 10,000 years. We have civilizations that rose and fell before we even invented writing. We have cities that burned and were rebuilt. We have empires that collapsed and were reborn. We are very, very good at losing things." "You destroyed yourselves to spite us," the prelate said bitterly. "No," Chen corrected. "We documented ourselves to liberate others. There's a difference. You have spent centuries making species afraid to lose. We spent 3 cycles showing the galaxy that losing everything is survivable. That defeat is temporary. That the only way to truly lose is to stop trying." She paused, then added, "You can still surrender, you know? Withdraw from the tributary worlds. Let them go. Your empire can survive this, but only if you choose to adapt." The transmission ended. The prelate sat in silence, watching his perfect strategy crumble around him. 17 rebellions. 17 worlds that were no longer afraid because they had watched humans fight without hope and still call it worthwhile. Humanity spent the next 50 years rebuilding. The 2 billion dead were mourned. The destroyed infrastructure was replaced. Earth's scars healed slowly. But humanity emerged from the ashes different than before, as they always did. Stronger, wiser, more unified. The Chromath became a cautionary tale told to young species. Beware of one-dimensional strategies. Beware of assuming fear is universal. Beware of fighting species that have spent millennia learning to lose gracefully and rebuild stubbornly. And in the Galactic Council, a new seat appeared with a plaque beneath it. The human seat. The plaque read, "They won by losing everything, and in doing so, taught the galaxy that losing is just another way to begin." Ambassador Chen Wei sat in that seat and smiled. The lesson had been expensive, painful, costly beyond measure, but it had been worth it, because humanity had not just saved themselves. They had saved 17 other species. They had broken an empire, and they had done it all by being willing to lose everything. After all, that was just Tuesday for humanity.